The Western Center reductions are obviously going to be contingent upon the vote of the JOC. There would be a range, if any. I mean, certainly there could be no cuts, so that's always. But the low end of the cuts impact to Pottsgrove would be $15,000 if any of them are made, and it could be as high as $49,000 if all the cuts are made. It's likely we'll get some additional money from the state, but it's still too early to tell. We haven't gotten any clarification, or even any basis for estimates yet. Hopefully, we'll get something. I would recommend we incorporate something in the budget once we get closer to that point in time. But there is one. It's relatively small, but it's still sizable item that I wanted to talk to you about. In the business office budget this year was a $40,000 software upgrade. We think we found a way, well, we know we found a way to lessen the budgetary impact on next year's budget for that. To provide you some background, we purchased the software in 2007. We've been operating on that version of software for 8 years. There are several versions beyond us at this point in time, and they're going to terminate support for that software version by the end of the calendar year. So I think it's something we have to upgrade or risk critical failure. But when we sat down and looked at it, our annual maintenance fee, which is about $13,000, comes due at the end of April, and we'd be tied into that we wouldn't get a refund for that if we upgraded in October. We'd have to pay the maintenance fee and the fee for the upgrade. So we questioned whether what the value of that maintenance fee was for the portion of time until we did an upgrade. And we determined that it was relatively low. We haven't had any major customizations that we've needed to make or anything like that. So we proposed something to the contractor, and they were okay with this. If the board would support moving forward with the upgrade, we think we can take half of that $40,000, put it into this year's budget. $13,000 of that would be offset by the software annual maintenance fee that we would not be paying, and we'd have to come up with another $7,000 in the current year budget to cover it. And that would lessen the impact on next year's budget from 40 to 20. So, something for you to consider.
I had a question about that one. So the software, the software upgrade or the change or whatever, the $40,000 thing, that's a purchase of software and it's not a recurring.
That's correct. There'll be an annual maintenance fee, which is going to be, eventually will be similar to what we're paying now, around that $11,000 to $15,000 range, but not. There wouldn't be one of those in the first year, the year of implementation.
Okay. So, so this year, we have some money that we're getting back from bringing rocks and from our bond purchases and from, what is the other thing? Oh, we had what's that? In the escrow account, yeah. So, so what I'm wondering is, since we're always told don't use our one-time windfall to to pay for things that are ongoing. But it seems to me that this is just a one-time. I mean, I know in 4 years or 8 years or whatever, we're going to have to repurchase it. But would it be possible to use some of that and do this one-time purchase of $40,000?
The concern I would have with that is that this is going to be It's software and labor to do the installation. If we gave them the authorization tomorrow, I don't think we would be done with the implementation by June 30th. Therefore, a portion of those costs would have to go into the next fiscal year. We don't know exactly how quickly they can schedule us because there are other upgrades that they're doing now. But we feel comfortable, if we split it, we could get half of the cost, half of the value, half of the services incurred before June 30th and just have the balance. Certainly, some of that money could be used. It might be next year's, but it is a one-time cost. We could pay, even if it goes into next year, we could pay for it with those funds that are available.
Couldn't we just pay half this year out of the surplus money that we got and the other half next year out of the surplus money that we still have?
We could.
Okay. Good point.
No, that's okay.
Is there some sort of training or something that comes with the installation that they have to facilitate it?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It's the same base software with a lot more functionality, is what it comes down to. So it's a new look, a new version. There's going to be individual staff access to an employee portal to give them the ability to change their dependents and their addresses and things like that. So it's going to be a lot more functional, but it's going to look and feel different. So it's going to take some training to get everybody who does use the product up to speed. And for those who don't use it now, some training, some basic training on how to use what they will have access to.
My only question is about the choir position. If we decided to go with full-time for that position, what would the impact be on those numbers that you gave us?
It's the savings if we went to halftime is about $38,000.
Any other questions?
The only other issue we had, which wasn't on the agenda, was the two taxpayer requests. But the two issues, one was a situation where a property transferred in June. The county duplicate was not updated to reflect the new homeowner, and therefore it appears as though the invoice went to the prior owner of the property, who neglected to pass it on to the new homeowner. As some background information, it's my understanding that this was the new homeowner was a business person who has multiple properties. So it appears as though there should be some basic understanding of when tax bills come out, and that there should have been some understanding. We have had a conversation with the tax collector, who was a new tax collector, to ask them to pay more attention to those transactions that take place in June. We've had this situation occur in the past in other municipalities. This happens to be a new tax collector. So I'm confident that he's going to look at these moving forward. The other is a scenario where a taxpayer submitted a check for payment dated the last day of the discount period. The check was not completely filled out, and the tax collector returned the check to the taxpayer, along with a note indicating that it was not completely filled out and that he should complete it and send it back to him as soon as possible. It appears as though the taxpayer did not open that mail, and then the next communication was in November, when the tax collector reached out to the taxpayer and said, you're in penalty, you have until the end of December to pay, or you'll be liened. Those are the backstories.
Do you recommend that we don't make any decision until we talk to the solicitor, or?
The tax collector code is pretty clear, that, there's not even a need to do reminders, but it's good practice.
No, I understand. I'm looking at this
So,
one.
but I would suggest if you're leaning towards waiving anything, that you have that conversation, because I don't know how you draw the line between any of these and any other requests that we get.
All
I
right.
think it would be a very difficult line to draw.
But on a specific one, the dollar amount was not put in the square. It was written out, and I have written many checks to people, and I forgot to write in $200. But it was written out $200, and the bank cashed the check, no problem, because it was written instead of the. I think this needs to be looked at a little more. You know, it's completely outlined, and it was received, like you said, the day that the penalty, the last day before the penalty.
It was dated the last.
It was dated the
It
last
was
day.
dated the last
Okay, it
day.
was
We
dated
don't.
the-
I don't know when it was
Okay,
received.
all right. Okay, so I guess,
Not to mention the man is 77 years old.
That wouldn't have been known at the point in time that taxes were collected.
no, I
I
understand.
understand that it wasn't known, but personally, I'm very empathetic to his case, and I, for one, would like to grant his waiver. If you feel we need to speak to our solicitor first, then I'll defer to your judgment. But I see a big difference between these two cases, and while I recognize the risk of a slippery slope, the reality is that in this case, that check could have been deposited and cashed, and the collector decided not to do that for whatever reason. So since it could have been, I think that he made a good faith effort to pay his taxes on time and avoid and actually get a discount, and that we should make it right for this particular taxpayer. I feel very strongly about it, actually.
I'm not going to argue. I'm not meaning this to argue. However, had the mail been opened and the issue been addressed, we would have been talking about the difference between discount and face, which was 2%. However, the taxpayer did not open the mail and pay the bill until December in penalty.
So we could also talk about a compromise in between then, based on that as well. And I'm open to
Is that the
discussion.
policy? Or was that his determination, like his opinion? I can't cash this check because you didn't do, or is it you didn't fill it out completely, so I can't cash it?
Typically, tax collectors, they go through training, and I've never sat through the training, but I believe the standard of operation for a tax collector is that if there is anything wrong with the check, that it gets returned to the taxpayer so that it can be corrected. Could this have been deposited? I don't know, perhaps. But that being said, we've had direct deposit checks, direct deposit vouchers deposited by the school district without signatures. So, just because it might get through a teller may not mean that it's properly completed. And I would be uncomfortable instructing a tax collector to complete a check based on what he thinks the tax collector meant to write, the taxpayer meant to write. So,
According to this letter from, I'm assuming it's their accountant, so I don't know. It says, spoken to the issuing bank as well as other banks and attorneys in the field, and all have said that the check was valid because the text block, which takes precedence, was filled in. So it sounds like we probably do need to talk to Mark about it, because it sounds like this accountant talked to an attorney and banks, and that it was a legal document, and that the tax collector just chose not to receive the legal document. So I'm wondering if, I mean, there's a slippery slope, but there's also a slippery slope the other way. Do we want to get into a legal battle with someone over whether their check was legal and we didn't take it, and how much is that
If we're
going to
considering
charge?
this a legal issue, we should talk about it in executive session.
That's my worry, is that since the accountant has talked with an attorney and has, an opinion from their attorney, we probably need to talk to our attorney, because I don't want this to I would hate to get this into a legal battle.
I just think it's a no-brainer. I agree that we should talk to Mark, but this one's just an easy one. Why make it hard?
Totally agree with you, Rick.
Now I'm really falling off.
This is a no-brainer.
Me as well, so there we go.
On the surface of this, I do think that we should give this guy a break, and just looking at the case, because we're all good people and we want to do this because we think it's the right thing to do. But then there's also the legal issue that if we need to fall back on that, there's that.
So this doesn't need to be voted on tonight? No, I think we should just, right, and tonight was as a discussion item was good. If you take the emotional side out of it, and, age and all of those things, or other factors, I think that some of the responsibility here has to go on the tax collector as well, in my opinion. You have this gentleman's address, you have his name, you saw his intent to pay on the date that it was due. Let's consult with Mark and see what we can do. And we'll talk about it again on the May 12th meeting, or have a vote on the decision. Fair? Okay. Was that it, Dave? So, in the other case, is this? Did you get the impression that this was a primary residence or a investment property? Okay.
My sense on that one is if you have multiple properties, when your taxes are due. Especially if you've bought multiple properties, you've done this more than once. They're not new.
And if you didn't get a bill, maybe you'd make a phone call? Because that was my thought. Like, oh, I didn't get a tax bill. Wow, it's August.
I guess we should just discuss them both with Mark.
Any new business?
Yeah, I do. Shelley, when's the vote going to be taken for the Western Center's budget? Correct. Do we need to?
Monday, but as I said, I don't know if they're gonna count the vote at the table, if they're gonna make it go back to the vote of the board members.
Well, right, but let's say if they want to count just the members that are there, should our 3 members have a good idea of what our board feels to do right?
I think it would be helpful.
We discuss it now, and we say this is what we would like for them to do.
What are our choices again?
The options that were recommended were, if they were gonna add program over there, to look at ways to look at cost savings to offset the program addition. So look at how they can repurpose resources. That's what the superintendents and the business managers recommended. They came back with wanting to do an additional half a dental for that program and a full-time protective services position and not eliminate their SRO. They have an SRO. We recommended back, the superintendents, that they eliminate the SRO and that the numbers obviously supported the dental addition of the half person, and the numbers could support the addition of a half protective services position as well. There's enough in the morning to have a half. The question then became, or the discussion became, do we want to have 2 or even 1.5 protective services spaces at the Western Center, or should that program only have, enough spaces for 1 teacher? In other words, are students leaving the Western Center having been in the protective services program with a lucrative enough skill set to make it worth their while to take that program all the way through their high school career and walk out of there and either be, a security officer or whatever else. Now, Mr. Morrison came back and said that students are going into the military sometimes. Sometimes they're going into police fields and other types of things. Even though here we have students that leave the high school and go into the police field, through ROTC, the military, those kinds of things. So those are happening, whether they're at the Western Center or they're at the high school. So some of the board members, and you can chime in, were discussing whether or not it was financially prudent to have more than 1 person doing protective services, because how many students are you going to funnel down that pathway? And that was part of the conversation.
Well, I'd like to know what our 3 sitting board members who know what's going on think. And I guess the question is, do we back the superintendent's recommendation or some other version of these different parts? So you guys know a lot more about it than I do.
Well,
so.
well, basically, with the half of protective services, they were really wanting a full-time position for that because they wanted to train the additional kids with EMT, and it was kind of looked at, give the kids everything they have so then they can do the EMT, we extend the program. The SRO, I thought that was the teacher that could be the half-time teacher for the protective services. Am I right in that?
The SRO has the certification temporarily to serve in the capacity of the protective services program should they want to go that route, but it's Mr. Morrison's intent to find another person and hire a person for that position and keep the SRO doing the SRO position, which when we kind of questioned as to what does the SRO do, Mr. Wennick, the principal, reiterated that he's like an assistant principal for him. And my response back is you have 300 students at a given time in that building, because 300 go in the morning, 300 go in the afternoon. Why do you need a director, a principal, and now what you're calling an assistant principal when I have a high school of 1,000 students that are there all day long every day, and that's all we have is a principal, an assistant principal, and another assistant principal. So it's 3 administrators to 3 administrators for 300 students at a time to 1,000 students. That doesn't seem right. That doesn't fit right to me. And I have elementary buildings with 700 students, and and Yolanda's working with 1 person. Lisa's up there with 450 students and no assistants, no SRO, and that doesn't sit right with me.
Patty, you mentioned the program and they wanted to do EMT. Are they going to do the EMT? Will they get a license, an EMT license? Is that part of the curriculum? My question being is, when are they going to do it? Because an EMT certification is only good for 3 years. So what are they going to do if they're in 9th grade or 10th grade?
There's no definitive plan that's been written.
Okay, that's food for thought. An EMT license is only good for 3 years, so if they're
well,
going to do it in 9th
basically,
grade.
they were just saying, this is what they were lobbying,
Okay.
Chris was lobbying, is
Fine.
basically went to a full-time teacher, we could expand these students, because
Sure.
that is the hottest class.
I'm sure it
over at
is.
the Western Center. And those kids come out with discipline, I mean, they're all
Yeah.
being placed in different places. It's so successful.
Sure it
There's
is.
like a waiting list.
Sounds good. I'd like to do it.
And, but in my opinion, I mean, help me out here. Like, guys, I'm thinking more that I don't want to take away from anything here at home. You know, and if we go with a half of protective services, eliminate the SRO, you know, it's hard, but unfortunately, as much as I love the Western Center, I have to think of our kids here first in our budget.
I mean, I'll say, I did question the addition of even a half of a teacher for the protective services course, because there are a lot of courses there that are being offered that I think we should be promoting more, like the dental field. And now, Mr. Morrison did come back and say, he gave us some statistics on where those kids are going, but in my opinion, yes, Patty said it's the hottest class, and I guess I look at it as, you know, we're trying to provide an education. I think the kids think it's cool to go in there and wear BDUs and combat boots. I'm a product of JROTC and college ROTC, so I'm not coming from a place I don't know this experience. I do, and I value it, but I don't know what we're setting those kids up for career-wise. Mr. Morrison was tasked with the job to grow that center. Okay, so if he can get a class filled with 250 protective services kids, he'd probably want to do that because he'd be filling up the school, and the school's not full right now. But to me, I think we should be, I mean, I think the only class that has more is cosmetology. Other than that, there's a lot of other classes there, and to me, I would be pointing them in a different direction. And just for the sake of numbers, we're not the only school district at the JOC looking at a deficit. We actually have, by a pretty good margin, the smallest deficit of the three. So to be, I mean, Springford's over $2 million at the index of a deficit. I know they're bigger, but we're all looking at deficits. We're all looking at potential cuts, and at this, you know, we want to grow the Western Center. We want to grow everything we do and give the kids the most opportunities we can, but to be pumping more money into there right now, considering, and I also don't understand the need for the SRO in his current role that he's filling. So to me, I think being frugal is the way to go this year with their budget.
So what I hear you saying is no SRO, potentially no halftime protective services, and
I would just cap. I mean, at some point we have to cap it.
But we're asking for half, not full-time.
Chris
For-
is asking for full-time.
Right.
And I'm not sure, I think that the question is, do you do a half, do you delay a year? But I explained to the board, there are 20 students that are actually displaying an interest in the morning program. So you could justify a half by the numbers we have. And there's 58 students, somewhere around 58, 59 students in the afternoon. So he, you know, he could use the help in the afternoon. He already teaches the morning and the afternoon. Last year, I think he just taught them all together in one lump. You know what I mean? But now we have, if you let the 20 new ones in, you can't teach 78 of them at once.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a little much.
Well, it seems like the more practical class was the dental. You know, the more practical request, I guess, is the half for dental. I mean, that seems like more students would benefit from that right away than the other per se. I mean, you can go into a dental cleaning program, I guess, or a 2-year program after high school to be a dental assistant. I mean, that's something that's practical and useful. Not that EMT is not, but it just seems like that would. Right. Yeah, she'd be all over it. So I think, is that what we're saying as a group?
So are we saying half dental and that's it?
But I don't think we get to, I mean, I don't know, we're going to be asked to vote yes or no on a budget next week.
Well,
Well,
specifics.
there might be some conversation to amend it.
Then vote no.
Yeah, I would suggest maybe vote no if they have those two things included. And the third thing is something that we would advocate for as a group, the dental.
Do we think that some of the other board members are in agreement with you folks on this? Yeah. Well, you need how many for it to pass? 5, okay. Well, I'm with you, Matt, and I'm with you, Patty. Our budget takes priority.
This is amazing. Are you here? Are you getting this? Thank you.
You gonna report on it?
Please. Please. Okay. Yeah.
You didn't speak, but I agree with Ted too.
That's good. Thank you. So, we're under new business. Yep.
Okay, well, speaking of the Western Center, this coming Saturday, May 2nd, from 9 to 3 p.m., they're having a car show. And Steve Bruno, who was one of the instructors over there, suddenly passed away. And all the kids got together, and his wife donated part of his car. And they made a bench into it. So pretty much all the students were involved in this. And I got to look at it when we were there, and it's amazing. So I invite everybody. The memorial's going to start at 1 o'clock. They're having cars, trucks, bikes, 4x4s. Skills USA is going to have a pancake breakfast. There'll be food, refreshments, demonstrations from the clusters, a spring plant sale. So, and also they'll be opening up summer camp pre-registration. So if you have anything you want to get outside and do, and get to see some of our kids. So I have that. And then I just have one more thing. Last week, the PTSA, I cannot say enough about at the high school. I did go to one of the meetings, and they're really struggling with officers there. And I would like to thank them for the post-prom, for what they did for our students. They raised the money at the football games, and then it was really, really nice that they are trying to find ways to spend the money and doing activities for the kids. But I did attend, and I did see Ashley and her son Brady there, Rachel's Challenge. And I have to tell you, I was really moved by that. So if you just bear with me a minute, I just want to read this to you because I was very inspired. And it kind of hit home with some things here at home that we need to mend with. So Rachel's Challenge includes a series of students empowering, educator motivating programs and strategies called the Awakening the Learner 5-step school process that equips students and adults to create and sustain safe, caring, and supportive learning environments essential for academic achievement. The programs are based on the writings of the life of a 17-year-old Rachel Scott, who was the first student killed at Columbine High School in 1999. Rachel left a legacy of reaching out to those who were different, who were picked on by others, or who were new at schools. Shortly before her death, she wrote, "If I have this theory that if one person can go out of their way to show compassion, then it will start a chain reaction of the same thing. People will never know how far a little kindness can go." And I was very, very moved. And I do thank the PTSA High School for supporting that for the kids, because I know that it really touched me. So, and thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I'll just take a minute. I want to thank everybody who has remained here, the board, Shelley, Dave, Bill. As we all know, I'm not going to rehash the whole thing. As we all know, my name was in the paper about some unpaid fees. It was brought to my attention from an email from Evan Brandt from the Mercury, and he asked if I'd like to reply. I called him back. We had a conversation. I told him honestly and forthright, and it's written in the paper. He wrote my reply in the paper about the whole thing. Yes, I did get in some financial difficulty and I had to make difficult decisions. And these fees that are listed there are just under $3,000, and I had to make a decision. The problem I have is myself and my ex-wife were the only two that knew about this. Now, I know it's public knowledge, but it's only public knowledge if you know how to get there and look. It's not that easy, okay? So the damage that was caused within my family about this is far greater than the damage can be caused by me being on the school board. The damage to my family is far greater than any damage as on the board. I had to do a lot of thinking, and I did, and I had some help from some fellow board members on this, and I appreciate it. Whoever decided to go and point somebody in that direction, I hope they sleep well at night, because what they did surely did not have the desired effect that they were looking for. And I truly, I don't want to know who they are. I don't. I just hope that, and I know that there's people in this room and listening on PCTV that have been in the same situation. I'm not stepping down. I'm running, and I'll continue to do so, because I believe that what I'm doing up here is the right thing. And I'm going to fight to stop what happened to me in the situation I was in happened to others. Okay, because there's a lot of people in this community that are in the same position as I am. And we need to fix that. Thank you.
Just a bit of good news. On Thursday, we start our spring music season, concert season. So we start with the elementary choir and then go all the way through till our last concert will be Miss Faust's final performance. That'll be our last concert of the season. So that'll be a good way to finish out the concert season. And if you would like to come and have a really good time, and I think see Rick get dunked in dunk tank, but also
5:40.
also that evening. So on this Friday, May 1st, is at Lower Pottsgrove is the community spring fling. It used to be just the elementary school spring fling. Now it's for the whole community, and many of our music students are going to be performing that night. So that'd be a great thing to come to if you want to support the music program or any of the other sports programs and dunk Rick in the tank.
It's at Lower Pottsgrove. Is there a rain date? Because if you're looking at the Friday forecast, D, it's not looking pretty.
There is not a rain date. There's not a rain date. If we have bad weather, it's going to be in the gym, under the portico, and in the cafeteria. So I don't think that you're off the hook yet.
I'm not trying to get off the hook. I'd just rather be at a nicer day so I don't get freezing cold
Yeah.
when I go in the water. But
Yeah.
All right, whatever.
It's going to be rain or shine. It'll be there at Lower Pottsgrove on Friday.
All right, with that, that's everything. Everybody said everything, that's great. We're going to make a motion to adjourn, and we're going to start our 8:45 executive session at 10:20. So with that, I'll make a motion that we adjourn. Second. Everybody, all in favor? All right.